We got our PT Kyle Habdo here.
How do you navigate this thing? It's like I hurt my shoulder and I want to be able to do muscle ups, and muscle ups are my weakness, so I have to train muscle ups, and they're coming up in this competition, but my shoulder hurts every single time I do it. That's, I think, across all people, that's the biggest problem. I feel like most of the things in the gym at first are just minor tweaks, but people, they're like, these are the things that are going to help my back pain, and they never progress it. But if you're trying to go from basic McGill Big 3 and trying to deadlift double body weight, you're missing a whole bunch of shit in the middle.
Hold on, we got to say this. Kyle was a drug addict.
Yep, late teens, early 20s, I got addicted to opiates. She was like, either get the fuck out of my house, go to rehab, or get the fuck out and go do whatever you want to do, and I don't care what that is. And I would smile a lot, because if you just smiled, people stopped asking you what was wrong. So he like basically called me out, and he's like, what the fuck do you have to smile for? Like, what could you possibly be happy about? And that was like so brutally honest. I tell them that so they can hopefully have hope.
I don't have headphones on, but I can hear you.
Boys?
Hey.
Hello.
So Chris, how do you like the framing of the new lights you just put up?
They're interesting. Maybe
Does that mean you like them or you don't like them?
Maybe we'll have some centerpiece soon.
Oh, that'd be
if
fun.
you've been watching since we've been in this new space, you've seen the room grow.
Yeah, we're evolutioning.
Yeah.
Evolutioning?
Whatever, come on.
So
you don't need to correct me
I've
on
been
that.
telling Habdo.
I'm just curious if that's a word.
No grammar police here.
I've been telling Habdo he could be on the podcast, or I've been asking him to be on the podcast forever, but then just every week it comes up. Sorry, let me move you here. And then Sam came in town from, where's he from?
Ireland.
Ireland.
How do you not know that from Sam's voice?
I always get nervous at the last second. I'm like, is it Scotland or Ireland?
Well, I thought you were going to say, where in Ireland is he from? And I was like, I have no idea.
Dublin.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
like close to Dublin.
Okay.
Where was I going with that? Oh, but so Sam showed up, and I was like, oh, well, we got to have Sam on. So I walked up to Kyle. I was like, hey, man, can we move you? And I just looked at the disappointment in his face, and I was like, never mind. You're still good for Tuesday. So here we are.
I was just like, this is just typical TTT stuff. I'm like, whatever, man. Just let me know when you want me to do it.
Yeah, on the fly scheduling.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What do you guys, we were talking about before that you guys have driven to the games, to Madison 3 times, to Dallas
3 times, and that's a 16-hour drive?
Yeah, like
14
down in,
or 16, and then we drove to Dallas this time.
what did you guys
And
talk
that's round
about?
trips, though.
Yeah, what did you
Yeah.
guys?
You want to know what we talked
Yeah, I
about?
do.
Kyle always jokes about
This
there
one
was one point on our second trip where we got to where you run out of conversations, and we ended up at, go ahead, Kyle.
What is your favorite state shape?
That's what you talk about.
Interesting. What were the votes?
gonna be
That's the first response I've ever seen that was actually curious.
Yeah.
Everyone else we've told that to is like, damn, y'all were really out of things to talk about.
Yeah.
I guess I could be interested very easily.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. Like, I feel like
I wanted to see what my
I feel
vote
like
was.
Kentucky, Florida, Michigan,
I mean,
Texas.
You basically cancel out all those states.
anything
that
that's
are like kind of
yeah, anything that's like a square or rectangle, that's gone.
Yeah.
Why do those states
But
even
some people
exist?
would really like that. If they're picking, they probably like would want the uniformity and cleanliness and not all the lines and zigzags. No,
I like
I
the
don't know.
zigzag.
I always
give me the chaos.
I always wonder, like, who back in the day went and figured, like Texas, I got it tattooed here on my ankle.
So it's got to be your
Who
favorite
went and
shape.
figured out all these little like crevices? Like, it's so specific. Like, someone was like, nope, that's our yard. That's our, nope, back away. Like, I get the square ones, like, okay, from here to here, but who?
When
did
do you
all-
think they started deciding to do like squares versus weird shapes?
I think they got lazy.
They just
I think they got that Louisiana Purchase, and they were like, you know what? We did the hard lifting.
It is a really interesting question. Like, when did all this? Somebody knows this, and somebody's going to be a historian who listens to this. But like, when did the actual states all get like formed? Because I think when they moved west, they just go out and like put a plot of, like they put their stand down and they're like, this is mine. And I think they took property and they were trying to convince people to go west.
All right, and that's why this is a fitness podcast.
Hell yeah.
Speaking of which, we got our PT Kyle Habdo here.
Hello.
Tee him up, Max.
Yeah, Habdo. Well, I wanted to start with a hook. I feel like we will go into rehab. Kyle is actually, why don't you talk about your education and then we'll go to the hook. I just like anticipated people up.
Okay, so I did school for a really long time. I think I was in higher education for 13 years, I think, in total. So my first degree was in English. It's a bachelor's. Then I got a bachelor's in natural science, health science. And basically that happened because I was in like my last class that I needed. It was like British literature too. And almost had like a panic attack moment where I was like, what the fuck am I going to do with this? Like, what do you do with an English degree? Like, yeah, I can write and I really enjoy writing, but what do you do? And literally at that moment, I left. I went to the registrar's office. I literally signed up for natural science, health science, which is the school's pre-med degree. So I could have went PA, PT, gone to med school, kind of like whatever I wanted to do. But it was like at least the basis for all of those courses that I could have taken.
So you finished all of your masters in English, and on your last class is when you decided to do the
so bachelor's in English,
yeah.
and I got to like basically the last class last semester, and I was just like, okay, like I'm gonna be done, and then freaked out, and then signed up for this other degree. So they kind of ran together ish, even though the English was mostly done, and that degree, like I said, set me up for either going to PA or PT, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And the more I thought about it, and I was like, well, I kind of like sports and I like medicine, so maybe I'll be a sports medicine doctor. So at that time, then I started taking on physics and organic chemistry and all these other classes that I needed in order to actually go to med school and take the MCAT, which I then took the MCAT. Grades were fine. MCAT score was okay, but not great. But my grades for my English degree, because I didn't care, we'll get into this later, my grades were so bad that it didn't offset each other. So I had to go do something else if I wanted to go to med school, which is then when I went to my master's program, which was an accelerated program. And that was for a master's in biomedical science. And they took a 2-year program, smashed it into 1 year. And they said, hey, if you can do this, this degree in this program, it basically sets you up really well to handle the stress of the first year of med school. It won't be exactly the same, but it's close enough where you can do it and feel like confident that at least you can survive. And that program was so fucking hard. I mean, like literally they just like opened up the fire hose and we're like, okay, here's the information, learn it. We're going to test you basically on a weekly basis. And I had to take...
And the whole time you're going to med school, you're going to hardcore and metalcore shows. And,
Yep.
You listen to a lot of screaming music.
I do. Yeah. I enjoy that a lot. I got to that program, 2 years, 1 year program, and it was really hard. And I was taking a lot of classes like virology, immunology, genetics, probably some other things that I can't think of at this time. And I could do it, and I did really well in the program. I almost had a 4.0. I just didn't care.
Humble brag.
Yeah. I just didn't care. I was like, I got to a point where I was just like, what's the point of all of this? Like, I like movement. I like being in the gym, which I had already found CrossFit at that time. Okay. And we can get into that story.
We're going to get into that story. I told you, I'm teeing them up.
And so I'm in this program. I'm not learning anything about movement. I'm not spending any time in the gym or very little time in the gym. And I'm like, okay, I want to know about kinesiology, human movement, a little bit more about rehab. Like, how do I kind of like learn strength and conditioning? How do I bring all these things together? So I finished the program and I make the decision not to go to med school, which there was a med school on that campus, and they pushed pretty hard for me to go to that school. And went back home to Buffalo because I was in Virginia, and signed up or applied to one of the PT schools in Buffalo, which is called DUville. Got accepted, did that program, and then ended up here.
Wow, that is a lot of school. I would not have had the focus, I don't think, to stay in school for that long, unless I knew like this was the thing that I was doing.
Yeah, people ask me like all the time, like, would you do it the same way? And absolutely fucking not. Like,
would anyone?
It was so unnecessary. So much of it was unnecessary. But at the same time, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't really know where I was going in life. So I was like, kind of like, I'm not grasping after straws, but I was just like reaching for something to try to find something that was meaningful and important to me. And I just didn't know what it was. And it wasn't really until I found CrossFit and strength and conditioning and all those kind of things that kind of like started to like kind of push me in the direction that I currently am in. But yeah, if I could do it again, man, I would not do higher education like that. No, definitely not.
You got pretty smart in the process, though. You learned a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot of things. I also forgot a lot of things.
yeah, that's true. All right, so you alluded to it like 3 times as you were talking about that. You got into CrossFit in an interesting way, and I feel like for me, I have I put Corpus Animus on the company seal as like mind and body. And I think I was...
And it's the name of this podcast.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. My bad. Corpus Animus is the name of this podcast. And I think I've always had this understanding or thought process that I had a little bit of work to do mentally and emotionally. And CrossFit for me in the early days, I think was a release valve and an outlet that I needed for my mental health. Like you come from football, you come from fighting, they're super intense. I'm a very aggressive person, and times 10 when I was young, anger management issues. So the release of CrossFit was really important for my just sanity to live in society. Yeah. And I started doing some training for a drug rehab facility at the first CrossFit that I worked at down in Florida. And that's kind of been like a passionate theme of mine and something that I've seen a lot in the CrossFit space, and your entry into CrossFit was kind of through that same realm. So I wanted to just,
different.
Yeah. Obviously different,
but
yeah, different. Yeah. Same, but different.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I wanted to just, I mean, I obviously know the story, so I can't really like ask like, oh, tell me about this, because that I don't know, but you had talked about it in one of our athlete camps, and the reaction, especially from people that have struggled, was like, oh man, I really
Hold on, we got to say this. Kyle was a drug addict.
Yep.
I was going to let him tell it. Yes.
All right.
Kyle was a drug addict.
Continue.
It could be like one of those AA meetings or NA meetings. My name is Kyle and I'm a drug addict.
Yeah. So yes, different in that sense. You told your story and it was really valuable and impactful to people that came from that same space or same struggle. So I thought that could be a good like hook into the podcast of your journey first into how you found CrossFit, and then we can let it go deeper into the rehab and training stuff after that.
Yeah. Just first of all, when I was like late teens, early 20s, I got addicted to opiates. So opiates are like I don't know, you probably know about the opiate epidemic, where they were basically just handing out pain medication like crazy to people for no reason at all. And when I got introduced to it, I wasn't given a prescription. It was just like my friends at the time, or the people I associated with, were like, hey, this is like drinking, but it's not drinking. And I think you'll enjoy it. Because at the time I liked the effect of drinking, but I didn't like the process of drinking. So
what do you mean by the process? And weren't you a bartender?
That was later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The process of like having to drink all this stuff to like feel like the effect of it, and like feeling like shit basically the next day, and having to take all these calories in, because I was concerned with like my body image and all this thing. So I didn't like that process. And they're like, hey, this is the same but different, and you won't have to do all the other stuff. So I started doing it, and I was like, oh, I like how it makes me feel, because it basically numbed me and tuned me out to the world, which is what I was looking for at the time, because I was angry and sad and depressed and struggling with like who I was and who I was in life, and like who I was in relation to like my family, and where the trajectory of my life was going, and all these things that were seemingly like huge weights on me. But also at the same time, I was like, dude, you're 17 or 18, but I didn't know how to
comprehend.
But I didn't know how to conceptualize it. I had no idea like how to like even deal with those emotions. So my way of dealing with those emotions was reaching for drugs.
Yeah.
Because it just numbed me. And it started off as like
before you got to the opiates, were you into other drugs, or was this kind of like?
I like smoked weed and drank.
You started that early.
Yeah.
How old were you? 17?
Is that early?
I started drinking when I was 13.
Yeah, that's earlier than I thought. I think I was
13.
That's
pretty
that's
early.
Like that's like in middle school.
That's 8th grade going into 9th grade.
That was when I think it was like the kids who were a little bit more rebellious that were doing it then, because it wasn't like kids wanted to do it. But I think by the time I was 17, not almost all the students, but probably like over half the student body had like snuck into their parents' cabinets or whatever. Also, as a tangent, I don't want to cut your story off, but in terms of opioids and how easy.
But Beyonce had the greatest music video of all time.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I got shoulder surgery my junior year, and I went and they gave me Percocet or like some form of opioid. And I was like 230 at the time. So they gave me like double the size. And when they wrote the prescription, they gave me double the prescription. Okay. So I got like one of those like almost horse size things of opioids, double the milligram prescriptions of a normal person. Yeah. And they were like really impactful, and you could get them so easily. Like I remember I ran out and went back to the doctor, and like without even a question, like it was probably over 6 weeks after I got the surgery and got another prescription of it. So anyways, I didn't have addiction issues with that. I had other issues, but sorry. So
you started at 13.
Drinking. Yeah. So then sometime towards the end of high school into going into college, that's when I started using, and it was like progressive. It was just like, it was every month or like once a month. And it was like every other weekend. And then it was every weekend. And then it started to be like every day. And then it was multiple times a day, like wake up in the morning, do it to go to work, do it to go to the gym, do it in between classes.
Are you hiding this from people?
Oh, for sure. All the time. Yeah. I mean, like so I'm hiding it from people as much as I can, or at least as much as I thought I was.
Do you think people knew?
I don't
like
think they knew.
People?
I don't think they knew right away, but I think after a while, like they just started to pick up on the signs of it. And this is part of like the thing of why school took me so long, is that in my first degree, so the English degree, I was using throughout that entire degree, and I basically had no ability to stand the stressors and like handle school. So I would just leave. And after a while, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to take a leave of absence and then I'm going to try to come back. And then I'm going to take a leave of absence, try to come back. And I think I did it a couple times. And finally that college basically said, you're no longer allowed here until you basically get your shit together. So that was like, I permanently left school, not really sure what I was going to do. And then that kind of was when things really started to like fall apart for me.
Did you have body changes and stuff? If you said you were into body image and already training, like did your body morph and were you eating the same?
I probably wasn't eating the same. I don't like, so like there's a lot of things I remember. There's a lot of things I don't remember. A lot of things feel like hazy to me. Yeah. And I was really small. That's all I remember. Like I was just small, like probably like 150, maybe even smaller. Yeah.
Even before that.
Yeah, so I was just small.
So you wouldn't have noticed like a loss of muscle mass.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff because you hadn't built it yet.
Yeah. And I was training, but like I was using and then going to the gym. So how effective was I being?
I'd be curious what the like intensity of that was, like what you were doing in that. Were you doing like bicep curls and stuff?
I was like doing like bodybuilding, like bodybuilding / powerlifting basically.
Okay. So I'm sure that story can be like, that's long in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
decided to,
I was going to say, I could wrap this up real quick. Like I decided, well, I didn't decide. It was basically given to me that I either needed to get my shit together, like go to rehab or get the
At what age?
21, 22.
And the school did that or like your family or your mom?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the school said I wasn't allowed back. They said I could come back if people would vouch for me. So after I got out of rehab, I had to like reach out to some professors who didn't really know me and who had to kind of like stick their neck out on the line for me, which was definitely a risky move for them. But like I was definitely in a way better position, but they didn't know that.
Yeah.
So my mom basically made the call. She was like, either get the fuck out of my house, go to rehab, or get the fuck out and go do whatever you want to do. And I don't care what that is. So in some like self-preservation, I was like, well, I'm just going to go to rehab and just try to like, I don't know, see what happens. And I don't know if
you weren't like inspired by it or did you like want to go or it was kind of just like, well, I got to go because I don't want to be homeless.
Yeah, it was more of that. Okay. I definitely had a lot of like, suicidal ideations or I think that's the right word, right? Yeah. And I definitely tried to overdose myself and kill myself a couple of times like in that process. And that was over 5 years. Like there was one time I remember where I went for it, right? I excessively drank and excessively took more pills than I wanted to. And I've never been so sick in my entire life. That and the whole next day was just throwing up and vomiting and I didn't move from the couch. Now, like, I don't know like how committed I was, but I remember that was my intention. So like my thought at that time was that I don't really want to be alive and I don't really care what happens. And then when that was put to me, it was like, all right, well, I'm just going to go to the rehab thing. Cause I guess like that's the next thing that I got to do. But I wasn't like in it to like get better. I was just like, I'm just going to go do this thing.
Yeah. And then you did the thing.
So I did the thing. I was in rehab for like inpatient rehab where you're like not allowed to do anything. They watch everything that you do. You have to attend all these like meetings. And I was,
what was like the first day or two like? I gotta imagine if you're not really in it and you're just kind of doing it to do it. Was it scary? Was it?
Yeah. Well, I was going through withdrawal while I was there.
What like sweats, puking?
Sweats, body aches. I don't remember puking at all, but maybe I did. Sleeplessness, restlessness. Yeah, I mean, just general like discomfort and like out of body experience where you're just kind of like, I would rather be doing literally anything else, or I want to get that fixed so I don't have to feel like this. I don't remember I don't think they gave me, because there's medication that will help you go through withdrawals.
Like methadone, maybe?
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called.
I think there's something that they use for heroin pretty commonly.
Yeah, and I don't think that they gave that to me because they wanted me to the people that went to this rehab to just like cold cut it, right? And just kind of like move on with life. And through like that whole process, that was, it was kind of like this awareness building that, and this is going to sound really shitty, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Are you sure you want to say it?
No, I'm going to say it anyway. And I'll caveat it after I say it. But like, as I was going through this, I was like, I'm better than these people that are in there. Now, that's what I thought. Now, in hindsight and looking back, I was like, no, you were the fucking same because you were in the same position that they were in. Their story and their lives were a little bit different, but you all ended up there doing the same shit. But that thought of being like, okay, like I can still do something with my life for whatever reason started to push me towards, okay, maybe I can be a little bit better. Maybe I can step away from this. Maybe I can try to do something different. So while yes, a shitty statement on my behalf, and I have
or like judgy
and definitely judgy. Yeah, for sure.
But you might have not have been in the right state of mind to have like perfect judgment at the time.
For sure. Yeah. And I mentioned this at the camp, and there was a counselor there, at the athlete camp that we talked about, that you mentioned, and
the counselor wasn't there. He mentioned the counselor.
I was just I was gonna say I mentioned the story at the athlete camp.
Oh, I thought you meant there was a counselor at the camp, and I was like, who would have been a counselor?
No, I was just saying that at our athlete camp, this counselor, because we had to do these meetings, right? And we had to like talk about our feelings, which I never did because I didn't like that, and it made me feel uncomfortable, and I didn't like expressing myself. And I would smile a lot because if you just smiled, people stopped asking you what was wrong. So he like basically called me out, and he's like, what the fuck do you have to smile for? Like, what could you possibly be happy about? And that was like so brutally honest and
aggressive like that too. He said it like that.
Yes. He was so aggressive. And I was just like, taken back, and I was like, I literally don't know. Huh. And ever since that, that kind of like sat with me, and I started to try, and it took me a really long time, still struggle with it now, but like talk about my feelings and talk about the things that I'm experiencing and how it's affecting me. But yeah, man, that guy, his approach and his aggression towards me about that, like really like
it's not towards you, it's towards a behavior he can see in you that he's realizing is some sort of a mask for what's really going on.
Yeah. Some sort of like defense mechanism or whatever. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So how long was that, like that whole process in that,
in that inpatient?
Yeah. And did it go after that?
It was like 36, 37 days. After that, I was mandatory to go to outpatient for 3 months. Had to go to the NA and AA circuit. And basically, like I joked, like my name's Kyle, and I'm a drug addict. I had to get up.
How were those like?
I had to get up and say that all the time. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't like them. They were not my vibe. There's heavy religious undertones that go through those, and people will tell you that like it's not religious, and your higher power can be anything that you want it to be. But to me, it just felt very much like going to church, and I'm just not a religious person. So it didn't vibe with me, but I knew like that was the thing that I had to do to like take the next step to kind of move forward. And I was already starting to like think, like I said, like, can I do something more with my life? Can I be something better than what I was? So I just like stuck it out to do the thing because that's what was required of me. And then once
required by who? The university?
No, required by like the inpatient. They had like
when you sign up, it says you have to come here for this period of time, and then you have to stick on your path out of here for this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And there was like stipulations about if you didn't do it, and I can't remember what they were. Okay. I don't want to misspeak on that.
Yeah.
But
it was like totally not your vibe, or it was like, did you get any benefit from those? You feel like, or? I know a lot of people speak of like the community.
Yeah, maybe. I can't like be certain anymore. It's been a long time since I've been to any of those meetings. I think if I could even like, if there's even something to like kind of grasp it, that I just wasn't by myself, that I was like, that this happens to other people, and the other people's stories were the same, worse, better. Like they all kind of like, but they all had this underlying like addiction basically that kind of affected their lives and like had widespreading effects to other people that were just like outside of like their circle.
Yeah. And I feel like if you said talking about your feelings was something you didn't do, but you kind of have to do to vent them and process them and have other people with experience help you navigate them, it's a very good platform for bringing people together with the same thing to talk about.
Yep.
So there's probably something there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
But then you just did that outpatient thing and then we're done? And you didn't have like cravings, go back, whatever?
Yeah. So I did that. And then I once I was done, I was like, okay, like I'm going to try to move forward and kind of just see where I can take this.
Redefine yourself.
Yeah. Redefine myself, make my like,
or define yourself. Cause maybe you hadn't defined yourself in the first place.
Yeah. Very true. I did. So this is like a side step to the story. I can't think it was like the AA circle people. They were like, maybe it was the outpatient people, but they told you like, don't get into a relationship right away. Like figure out who you are and try to like set yourself up for success in some fashion. Well, like, cause I'm an idiot. I started dating this girl.
You're a smart idiot.
Started dating this girl. Not immediately, but close enough. And because I was in this process of like redefining or defining myself, my personality and my person became her, you know what I mean? And I put a lot of like myself into her. And then when that ended, it was almost like this, like, this wave of
like a crash.
I have to start all over again. So, so like the rehab thing was like 22, the kind of like coming back and getting back into school, working at this call center that I worked at for a really long time. So I could get my car back and get my phone back and just like start paying my bills again.
Was it taken from you or you just didn't have money?
I didn't have money to pay for anything. So like everything, well, it got taken from me because I couldn't pay for it.
Got repossessed.
Yeah. Well, my mom was like, so like my mom canceled the phone plan. She took my car, and luckily like I had been paying a little bit ahead. So like the car payments didn't lapse. I'm sure she paid some for sure. But like I was a little bit ahead. So it wasn't like I don't know, got to a point where it was going to get repossessed. So I got out of that, and then I dated this girl while I was getting back into school, and then like that ended, and I had to like go through this whole process of actually redefining myself, because I like didn't know still who I was after going from the outpatient into like real life. And that was just like a little side story. So like when I think about life restarting or like who I was and defining myself, I think about that as like 25. So even though I had been out of the rehab like circuit or whatever you want to call it, or like that process since like 22 or 23, like I don't feel like life quote unquote started for me until 25, which was
how old are you
10
now?
years ago.
Okay.
I feel like that happens multiple times in life.
I'm sure
like
it does.
Where you have like a phase shift for whatever reason, like a new job, or you were an athlete and then you stop being an athlete and make a transition.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not as profound, and each stage of doing it, probably as you get older, you've shaped your personality more and more and more.
Yeah.
But in terms of like your day-to-day experience, who you interact with, how you show up, how you speak about yourself, like I think there are moments in our life where we have to go inside and almost like process and define.
We've talked about this, like, this is like, again, tangent to this conversation, but we've talked about like an identity crisis or an identity shift when an athlete decides that they're going to be done competing. It's like, well, your entire life was this thing. Like, who are you now? And I had to kind of do that at 25 again, basically. Like, yeah, I no longer consider myself a drug addict, which I don't. And people who have gone through addiction will probably, I don't know if they'll vibe with that thought process. A lot of them hold on to that, and like that's like
they won't vibe with the fact that you just said that you're not a drug addict.
Yeah, like yes, I was for sure. There's no doubt in my mind. I did a lot of shitty things. The things that I did, I for sure was addicted to drugs, but I'm no longer addicted to drugs, and I'm no longer a drug addict. But there's a lot of people in that addiction world who have faced addiction who will never not identify with that for fear of slipping back and for fear of going back to whoever that was. And to me, like, it just didn't serve me to hold on to those things, because it felt like such this like weight that was dragging me down, and it didn't serve like this new identity that I was trying to build. And I was like, I can't hold on to this and become someone new. So I have to let this go and just hope that like the things that I learned from that, like it's not letting go and forgetting, but it's like letting go and taking not identifying it. Yeah. Not identifying it, but also learning, like taking those lessons learned and making better decisions going forward. So I can just, I don't know, be a better human.
Yeah, I have a question about the identity thing. This is kind of tangential to athletes, but I think I've lost coaching opportunities before in the past because I started work, or people reached out, high profile athletes reached out, and my process of over time, like I think in the beginning, it was like, oh my God, a high level athlete, so cool, I get to work with them. And then over time, I became more discerning, like, okay, well, high-level athletes require a lot of time and they're in the spotlight, and then your reputation can be affected by working with them because they're in the spotlight and blah, blah, blah. So as it started happening over time, I'd send like real deep introspective essay questions to them. Like, why do you want to coach? What do you want to accomplish? Why do you want to accomplish what you want to accomplish? If you don't accomplish what you are setting out to accomplish, what else can you learn from your journey? And I would send that, and some people just never responded. But I'm of the opinion that athletes should be investing in that, like right off the bat. Like I feel like I missed out on that opportunity when I was younger. Yeah. And if I could go back and talk to my younger self, and like, it might sound crazy because I was such a meathead, but I'd be like, hey, you should like study a little bit of philosophy to understand how to think about your life and your impact and how you interact with others. Do you think that if you could talk to like younger athletes or your younger self, that you'd encourage that, or you got to live life and go through those experiences that force you then to go through those introspective moments. Because sometimes I feel like it's like movement work where I'm like, do movement works, do it. And people are like, no. And then they get hurt. And I'm like, all right, well, now you're going to do movement work.
Yeah. I mean, this is, yes to the latter. I think so. Okay,
you got to live.
Well, yeah. So, okay. Let me kind of like flesh this out. I've tried to tell people about my experiences and hope that they can walk away with it and they can like take something from it. But I like this underlying thing of like people need to live life in order to feel their own experience and to make their own judgments based on those things is like, I think it's the thing. And it's why people don't like doing movement work until they're hurt and they're like, oh shit, like now I got to do all this other stuff. And I know that you've been preaching this to me, but like now I understand why it's so important.
Like you've given them the message so many times.
Yeah, you've given them the message. Yeah. One of my athletes was just literally talking to me and she's like, you're so like stoic. And I don't even feel that stoic, but she's like, you're so stoic. When things go wrong, you're like, you're really able to like think logically and rationally and like help me process these things. And where did that come from? And it's like, well, I lived a life experience that most people won't live and it's helped shaped me. But it's like, it's hard for me. It's like if I was going to teach that girl like how to like use it for herself, I don't know if the same things that worked for me would work for her. And she would have to go through her own process, but she would also need a catalyst in order to go through those things.
Yeah. Something hard emotionally that you have to process and deal with.
Yeah.
And life, I feel like life gives that to everyone, no matter what.
And it's relative.
You can like live behaviorally. Like you made choices that made that intense and quick and early. But if you live long enough, like that'll just happen. Something will happen in your life that you got to like really process.
I feel like it's good to know those things, like to know to do movement work rather than not, so that when it happens, now you could be like, oh, that's the thing. But I do agree that I think you kind of have to make your mistakes and then be like, oh yeah, there's that thing I've been not doing.
But really compliant athletes like Travis, he hated movement work. Like he used to call it on ramp, and every time athletes came in, he'd be like, this is the stuff that I do that most people don't do. And it was his competitive edge. And he had to do it to get to a high level. And then he had a 10-year career with like, or 10 plus year career with limited injuries and stuff like that. So I do think that some people, learn from the mistakes of others because their goals are important enough that they don't have to have
God bless these people.
I mean, that's at least what I would try to sell. I'd sell you on the idea of like, do the work. It's like saving and investing or something like that. It's like people will say that, and then people will get into their like late 30s, 40s, whatever, and be like, oh, I should have like done a little bit of saving and investing or something along those lines.
For sure. I think it also depends on what that person puts worth in. So like from a coach athlete relationship, so like for Travis and you guys, like Travis obviously held you in a really high regard. So he trusted what you said and we're like, hey, this is the thing that Max says I have to do in order to be one of the best. So I'm going to do the thing. But maybe if it was like, I don't know, somebody else who didn't like, who like wanted your opinion, but also at the same time was like, yeah, he doesn't know really what he's talking about, but he's good enough to help me, probably would just ignore your advice.
Interesting.
So I think it's also like
who's the messenger?
Yeah, who's the messenger and who's like listening for the message.
Yeah. Interesting. So in this process, we'll get to like how you found CrossFit and that, but it sounds like you are already interested in physical training.
Yeah.
Is there something that like you could tie to, because I feel like all my negative life experiences and my like evolution as a human helped my coaching, and then the coaching itself helped me become a human and kind of reinforce that progress curve. Is there something that like going through that where you're like, hey, this created aside from that stoicism and ability to think rationally when things are going poorly, that you learned that you try to pass off to people in that process? Or do you think it's something that you just like learned for yourself and then gives you more purpose in your day to day to be like, I know what it's like to live life without any feeling, and that's not the way I want to go, and I want to feel and contribute, and it was for you. Like, do you think that it created something tangible that you give back with, or more so just was like something you had to go through to define yourself?
I think it's a bit of both. It definitely was something that I think first, it's like something very personal to me. And I don't necessarily take those lessons or like the redefinement of myself and kind of like push it on people or like try to like sway them to do anything. But part of like the process of me like coming back out of that and like refining and like defining myself, one of the things that I really like, which I think is why I got kind of like towards this rehab coaching thing, is that I like helping people achieve something. And I don't know what that something is until I have that conversation with that person. But it's like if they have a goal that's like a far-reaching goal, like I feel like there's something about that drives me forward. And it could be small. It doesn't have to be anything about the gym. It could just be like I want to be a better human being. Maybe it says I want to do a muscle up. Maybe it's I want to like go to the CrossFit Games. But whatever that goal is, that thing drives me forward to help that person. And I think that's birthed out of like feeling nothing and not having worth, or not feeling like I had worth in this world, and then trying to like rebuild that. I think that has really helped me like in this coaching and like physio rehab space.
Yeah. I remember so I learned about this. We didn't talk about this in the mentorship program, right? No. So I learned about this part of your past. We were doing that camp, and we did the original run-throughs of the speech that you were giving.
Yep.
And I remember listening, and like I'm empathetic and a very feeling oriented person in general. I think I have a lot of feels.
Yeah. And
you told your story, and like the way you told your story was like, I remember it was like you came out at abrupt, like right away. And I was like, oh, inside I was like, holy shit, like this is crazy. Like what a wild story.
Yeah.
Not judgy, because like I went through my own shit. Yeah. So like I think I'm naturally pretty like cool,
open
like
about things.
like whatever,
Sure.
cool. That was your story. Like you're different, and that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking like, okay, how are people going to process this? And we had a talk actually where I told you like, hey, you might want to change your story arc a little bit in terms of like not leading right with that, because like people might not really vibe with that.
Yeah.
And I think also I have a tendency to overshare. So like I overshared some of my stories growing up, and people reacted to it in ways I didn't expect, like couldn't process it, or like they didn't know how to respond.
Yeah.
Do you experience that at all? Or like, do you like keep part of that in for fear of how other people react to or judge or change their opinion of you as a coach? I'm also asking this because I feel like you've been more open. I talk about it in like passing, not really in detail. I've not like talked about stories and past stuff. And I think part of it is just that hesitation is like, will this change how people will react to me or think of me or whatever?
Yeah.
So this may be like guidance as well.
Yeah. I think at first when I used to tell people, I felt obligated to tell people, because I felt this obligation to be like, hey, this is who I was/am kind of right now. And if you don't vibe with me like because of these things, then that's fine. And I just want you to know like that's who I was. And if you want to walk away because you don't want like a relationship with me, that's okay. But this is who I was. These are the things I did.
Even in coaching.
Not in coaching, not yet.
You're talking about personal.
I'm talking about personally, like in life. Like I used to tell people this, like it used to be like some like not the first thing, because like that would be super aggressive for them to like be like, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
But it used to be like something that I told people pretty quickly early on, and now that like it's been 10 years now, I don't really tell people about it anymore. I don't have a problem talking about it. The reason more now that I tell people is, and like, this is going to kind of be contradictory to what I said, but I hope that people can take something away and they can learn from it, more from a sense that people can change. Because I think people think people can't change. Like there's that adage of a tiger doesn't change its stripes or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like,
well, can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah, I can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's like, I was somebody and I was a very different person than who I am now. Yes. Are there things that are inherently still me that are characteristics that I still carry forward? For sure. But there's so many things about who I was that are not who I am now. So I tell people that so they can hopefully have hope if something feels not right in their life, that you can be something more or better or change the trajectory of wherever you're walking. And sometimes it has to come out in coaching and sometimes it doesn't. But hopefully, like, if I don't have to be so direct about it in coaching, at least I can like talk about it in a roundabout way to hopefully help the person be a better person or help the person be a better athlete if that's what they need.
All right. So first of all, I would say, I'm proud for you. I feel like it's a journey that a lot of people don't take and don't realize how hard it is to overcome those things and redefine yourself. So I've only known you for however long, 5 years or whatever it was when you came on board, and I've seen your growth as a professional, and I didn't even know that stuff about you, but knowing that that's where you came from and why you were working so hard, I feel like just makes me more proud to know you. So well done on that front.
I appreciate that.
All right. So now to training. So when this process, you go through rehab, you go through your outpatient, and you've been casually being a meathead at 150 pounds in the gym, bicep curling. What got you into CrossFit?
So,
and hold on, where were you in that schooling arc when it stopped? Do you finish undergrad?
When I started doing CrossFit, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like you were finishing rehab. You just went back to undergrad.
So when I left rehab, I didn't have a lot of things to do, right? Because no friends, no car, no phone, no money.
Sound like a country song.
Yeah, right. Maybe I'll write one.
Yeah. You got to sing it on the podcast.
Yeah. My aunt liked working out. She's a bodybuilder, or was a bodybuilder. Maybe she is a bodybuilder still. And she would just drop me off at the gym for like 2 hours. She'd be like, all right, I'll come pick you up later. So as soon as I left rehab, I went right back to the gym because I was like, well, I need something to do with my energy and like all this like pent up, like just like
frustration.
Yeah, just frustration and like honestly anger at myself still.
Hold on, are you a frustration guy or a frustration?
A frustration guy.
Oh, I thought I just heard a fuss.
I'd probably say it fast like that. I definitely speak fast.
It's a big debate in the community.
Well, there's an R.
Yeah, someone will comment.
There's an R, so you could probably say frustration.
Yeah, I say frustration.
Yeah, it's frustration for sure.
So at this gym, it's just like a normal Globo gym. That was before I started school, and then I went back to school. And as I was going back to school, this is going to combine a different story, but I got hurt playing soccer for the college that I went back to. And
they let you keep your eligibility that whole time?
No. I played soccer before I went to rehab. So this is this is like two different stories. I'm just going to try to like smush them together real quick. I got hurt playing soccer. They diagnosed me with a sports hernia, which kind of meant they didn't really know what was wrong. Sports hernia technically is like, I think, a separation of the muscle wall, but like nothing's protruding through. So there's no actual like bulge. So anytime that I tried to run, I would have intense pain basically at the front of my hip near my groin. So now fast forward to the other story. So I'm back in school. I'm going to this Globo gym. I had tried PT and rehab things in the past. And the consensus that was given to me was basically just stop running and find something else to do. So at this gym, I met this man. His name is Chris Nentars. He is a PT. He ends up becoming like a good friend of mine and a mentor of mine. And he, like, I don't know, we started talking, stops me in the gym and goes, I'll have you running in 3 months if you work with me. And I was like, all right, like, let's just see what happens. And then like almost like 3 months to the day, that dude had me running, doing sprints in the parking lot. And I was like, oh man, there's something here. So now it's like, I'm back in school. I'm now starting the second degree. I'm working with this dude and I'm starting to like play with training, and I'm starting to do bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I'm messing with gymnastics, and I'm starting to Olympic lift, and I'm doing all this in a Globo gym. So it's a little weird. And I'm like doing handstand walking and snatching and whatever, all this. I'm teaching myself all these things as well.
You get stared at.
Oh yeah.
I've been to like a bunch of gyms, and like I'll do jujitsu stretching and handstands and deadlifts, and like I can feel people's eyes on me. I'm like, oh, I don't like this.
Yeah. I actually had some of like the like old time bodybuilders, the dudes that were like definitely juiced out, but like, you know, they just like, they're always there, come up to me and be like, what you do is really impressive. And I'm like, I don't do anything. I'm trying to walk in my hands. You're over there moving the actual load, man. Like, what are we talking about being impressive? But it was cool that
you get it now though.
Yeah, it was cool. How this turns into CrossFit is that PT owned a part of the CrossFit gym that I started working at. So he would see me work out, see me do all these things. And he's like, you got to come down to my gym. I think you're really going to like it.
What year is this?
Oh God. 2016, 2017. I think that's when I first started. So maybe just before that. And he kept bothering me about it. And at that time I had a really like negative connotation with CrossFit. I was just like, they don't know what they're doing. It's just like crazy ass movement. People are getting hurt left and right. Like, why would I want to do that? And he bothered me enough about it that I was like, okay, whatever. I'm going to come down on a Saturday. They did like a free like Saturday class, and it ended up being like kettlebell swings, running, and burpees or something to that effect. Nothing like, it wasn't a name workout. I couldn't even tell you what the workout was, but I did it, finished, and I was like, I could be really good at this. I was like, I could do this. This could be it for me.
You got hooked on day one, man.
I got hooked on day one. And I think I went home on that day. Then it was Sunday. And then I think I came back on Monday and signed up. And then I like never left.
Nice.
And I think in that first month, I stayed the entire time. they lost a coach or needed a coach. They asked me to coach right away. Went and got the L1 and then basically just started coaching there.
Where did the negative we got into CrossFit earlier, and for me at the time, there wasn't really negative press about it, or like if it was very marginal. It was more cultural from the inside because CrossFit wasn't big enough to have spawned haters. Yeah. But you know, fast forward to 2016, that was kind of the peak of like the sport and the visibility and the Netflix documentaries and all that jazz. So then that also meant there were like more haters. For sure. Was it you getting like talking, because that PT, obviously if he owned a CrossFit, was early on in the process? Because I feel like the strength conditioning community, PT community, medical community, as it was starting to gain popularity, was like the biggest haters. So like, where did you form that first opinion?
It was from like the friend group that I had started establishing, and they were like gym guys. Okay. And like they
were more bodybuilders,
powerlifter style guys. Okay. And they just, you know, and their thought process about CrossFit was that it was stupid and, you know, butterfly pull-ups are necessary and all this stuff. Yeah. So like I kind of like took that on because that's what they were saying. So that when I got approached to do CrossFit, I was like, well, that's stupid. I would never do that.
Okay. Okay. So you didn't have like, it's not like you were like researching and seeing articles. Definitely and not. You weren't at that level yet.
No, I didn't even really know what it was. I had seen it on ESPN, but like I didn't really know what it was.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is now?
That is a good question.
I've been to the games a couple of times. I don't know.
A company.
It's definitely a company. Do you want me to really answer that question?
No, not really. It was all for the gigs.
That's what I thought.
It was a good gig. So, okay. So, and then how long were you at the gym? At some point in there was you started the mentorship program, but that was like 4 years after coaching, 5 years after coaching.
Okay. So
and PT school.
Yep. So I worked there until, I'm going to get the dates wrong, 2018. Then that was when I was like, okay, I need to do something because I'm still not sure with this life, and making $20 an hour is not going to cut it for me. So then I took the master's program. I moved from Buffalo to Virginia. I went to Liberty University. I did that for an entire year, then decided I wasn't going to go to med school. So then I moved back to Buffalo. So that's, I don't know, 2019 or something like that. Signed up for PT school and then did the PT school thing. And then we had our mentorship at the end of COVID.
Oh yeah.
Which was like the start of my last year. And the only reason that this all worked out for me was because COVID happened. My classes went online. You offered the mentorship, and I had time. And it was just like, it just kind of like all aligned really well for me. So it was like I was taking PT classes and then doing the mentorship calls and whatever else needed with you.
Prior to that, you were in our classes, or you were in our courses?
So I took all the courses. I was in the classroom. I had been working with Mike McGoldrick for 3 years.
One-on-one coaching?
Yeah, one-on-one coaching for 3 years at that point.
Came to some camps.
Came to some camps. I think my like review is still on the website. It's
what
like
review?
It's like me jumping, like my athlete review of like working with Mike and like how competitive it made me feel. The last time I looked, it was still out there, which I think is funny.
I don't remember.
It's like me jumping over a barbell, and it's like I feel competitive for the first time in my life and all this stuff. And it's just
like a testimonial.
A testimonial. Sorry, testimonial. Yeah, it's just.
I was like, what's an athlete?
Yeah,
review?
no, it's just so funny. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, I didn't even think about that. I forgot that you were already working with Mike when you started the mentorship program. Yeah. So you're somebody that's kind of like interesting in the development process, in that you were coaching mostly class-based CrossFitters while you were going through PT school. And then after you came on here, that kind of shifted. Yep. But what was like biggest things that you saw that you were like going through PT school and you're learning all this stuff about movement and you're independently learning about powerlifting and gymnastics and whatever. So like your knowledge base relative to like the average entry level class person was probably pretty high. What did you find that you were trying to like give back to that community, or common mistakes that like if somebody just is a regular trainee, meaning they want to be fit, they want to be healthy, but they're not the competitive style CrossFitter who wants to go and actually identify as an athlete and like get to the next level. What did you kind of like learn in the process that you were trying to cultivate in that CrossFit class type setting?
Well, that gym was owned by two guys, both named Chris, and they were both heavily in like I would say the one was a PT, obviously, and the other one was just like interested in PT, right? So they were both heavily based in like this movement, quality of movement realm, and that was heavily influenced on me. So, and then layer on top going to actual PT school, and then all the things I was learning on the side. Like, I think the biggest thing that was like movement quality over intensity. It's like, yes, go hard, but go hard to the extent that your body allows you to go hard, because you're just here for an hour, and this is a thing that you do. It's part of your day, and it's not even the thing. It's just like to be supplementary to your life. So don't hurt yourself at the expense of trying to do something that you can't do at this time.
Like faster or heavier.
Yeah, build towards this thing. Give yourself time. So I think that was like the biggest thing, is that we really prefaced movement quality over quantity or speed or intensity. Still give them intensity. Still make them try hard. Still push them to do things, but within reason.
What is the unreasonable things most people do, in your opinion, from a
class-based perspective?
Yeah.
I think most class members are there just to come and sweat. They don't necessarily care if the movement looks good, if the weight is necessarily heavy. Now, there's definitely caveats to that.
There's some people that care.
Yeah, there's some people that care about those things. But I think for the most part, people just want to come there. Most class members are there just to have an hour of their day where they don't really think about things. They can come in, they can sweat, and have a social hour. So I personally have just tried to keep that in mind for people that like, they don't really care if they ever snatch or handstand push-up or handstand walk or do anything like that, but they just want to come in and they want to sweat, and they feel like they worked out and feel like they have accomplished something, even though that something might be relatively low on our scale, because we work with people who are very A-type and want to like reach these high-level goals or achieve these like other things. You just have to have, it's not lower expectations, it's just different expectations of like, what can we expect from these people and what can we give them in order for them to like at least feel safe, but feel like they're making progress towards something, even though their progress isn't like going to the CrossFit Games. It's just like, maybe they're just trying to lose 5 pounds. Maybe they just want to come here for a social hour. Maybe they just want to, I don't know, maybe they want to back squat a little bit heavier, or they want to squat to depth, maybe, because they're older.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to say. But like, I don't, like, from like what do they do wrong? I think the biggest thing for my class member is just like the ego gets in the way. And I've had this conversation a ton of times where like, you get somebody who comes into the CrossFit gym for the first time, and they see people throwing a 135 barbell around, and they're like, oh, I want to do that. And maybe they have the capacity, the raw strength to do it, but they don't have the resiliency or the tolerance in order to sustain the contractions or the speed of contraction or the intensity of the contraction,
or the technique to be able to maintain when they're doing it, when they're tired.
Yeah, I was about to say under fatigue.
Yeah, because that's the biggest thing, at least like from what I see in a CrossFit space. Like, you can refine the technique of a snatch, and you can do it with an empty barbell. It's not that heavy, and you can get people, okay, they're moving pretty good. But then you compound it with like, all right, now you're doing a bunch of pull-ups, or you're doing a bunch of toes to bar. Now your heart rate's really elevated. If you haven't polished those things, that's when they really start to break down, I feel like. The fatigue.
Yeah.
What attracted you to us and what we were putting out training-wise at that time? Was it like the intellectualism because you were a nerd and we were nerds?
Yes.
Is that it? Yes. All right. Easy answer.
No, for real though. I mean, I just aligned with like the message and how you spoke about training and how you conceptualized training and conceptualized movement.
You can't remember the first video or whatever
it was definitely, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's like, questions with Max, or what were the
like a Q&A?
Ask Max.
Yeah, Ask Max. It was the Ask Max like segment where you guys did it for like a couple weeks, and like there was clocks, and it was fun with you. It was you and Mike, and you guys would just like riff on a bunch of topics, and those, I was like, I heard that and I was like, oh man, this got me. And then from there it was like jumping into like signing up for coaching and like going into the courses and whatnot.
And then the results from training themselves.
And then I just started getting better. Okay. I mean, the first thing that Mike told me was, I had said, this is so funny. I asked Mike, I was like, he's like, what's your goal? And I was like, well, I'd like to be a regional athlete. I'd like to try to make it to the regional floor. I think that would be like a really cool accomplishment and just like give me something to work for. He goes, it's never going to happen.
Oh my God.
And I was like, well, I'd like to try if I can. He goes, yeah, for sure. I just want to be honest with you. And it's just not going to happen for you.
What was his justification? Your strength numbers?
Yeah, my strength numbers.
Oh, okay. Where were they at the time?
Oh, terrible.
And where were they at the time, and where'd they need to be to get to regionals at that time?
Who knows?
Because I can't even remember.
I don't even know. But I couldn't even snatch over 200 pounds pounds at the time.
Yeah, it probably had to be like 255 to 265.
I could barely clean 250 at the time. So it's just like
Did you appreciate that honesty, or did it crush you for a minute?
No, I mean, I appreciate him being honest, but also at the same time, I was like, but it also, for me, because like this is who I am, it fueled me. And I was like, well, I'm going to still fucking try, and I'm still going to do the thing. And I want to still like put the work and the effort in and see what happens. Cause like, I mean, what if I just walk away? Like, what's the point of that?
Yeah. I've had like mixed experiences. Like, I'm pretty blunt and honest sometimes about things. I've had people that like didn't work with me because I said things like that. Like, I almost pooped on their goals.
Yeah.
I've had people that like tried to prove me wrong.
Yep.
And then I've had people be like, oh, okay. Like, I'll either like you or like, I want to try anyway and just give me the best shot I can do, or just like, all right, let's just define different goals. Then you had better perspective than I have.
Yeah.
So they just like kind of changed and move on. Yeah. That's funny that fueled you. Yeah. Did you feel like he didn't believe in you or anything, or?
No, I like when John sent the list, I didn't know who any of the names were. So it's just like, he was the only name that I was like, I had watched Barbell Shrugged. I had watched him speak on, and I had watched him talk with all these like other people. So I like
he was like familiar.
He was familiar, and I respected what he had to say because I had already listened to him talk. And I was like, okay, like he
knows what games athlete.
Yeah, he's in a chapter of Rich Fronting's book.
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah, he's in there somewhere.
Is he really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
He mentions him.
Oh, nice.
That's his claim to fame.
Nice.
I saw you on page 200.
Wasn't that 2013 games appearance?
Yeah, it was last place.
Yeah. But yeah, so that all that stuff, I guess that led me to the mentorship, and that was in.
Okay, so we went through the mentorship program, yada yada yada. He was really good in it. Decided to hire you, and then I feel like anytime somebody's a competitive athlete, like when you move from the normal class member into like, I have a goal and I want to train, injury risk or just being injured or having like soft tissue things it's like, it's part of the game. You can't train smart enough that you're never going to be getting hurt. So if you do get hurt, one of the determiners of your success is how fast can you get back to being an elite performer. It's like not having a dip that keeps you out of it. You have any just like general tips or things that you've seen people do incorrectly in that process, or words of wisdom that you'd want to share?
Yeah. Is this for the athlete?
Yeah. I don't think there's like a huge group of rehab specialists, PTs, whatever.
Yeah, no, I just meant like, is it like for
coaches? Let's start with athletes and then kind of move more into like let's spend less time on the coach PT side, more time so that if somebody's an athlete specifically, which more people here are probably training, they can get something practical from it.
Yeah. I think the first thing is you have to kind of determine, is this like is this like an acute thing, like a little tweak, like where it's like, I just chill for 2 days and I'm going to be totally fine? Or is this like an actual injury? Because I think there's definitely a difference there. And
are you hurt or are you injured?
Yeah. And I don't know if people have awareness enough, honestly, to know, because like, if you've never been hurt before and all of a sudden something's bothering you, do you have like the wherewithal to be like, okay, let's just say the shoulder example, my shoulder's hurting me and it hurts when I snatch. Well, if you just don't snatch for 2 days and then you're like, are you going to be fine? And like, do you know if you're going to be fine? So I think the first is just having enough patience to kind of feel out what your body feels like and like that might just be a skill in itself, honestly, like learning like to like be like understanding of how your body feels and how it's operating. So that was like the first thing is I would try to like determine like, is it an actual injury or is it just a minor tweak that if you just chill, it's going to be fine?
How often do you feel like that's the case
with like minor tweaks versus injuries?
Yeah,
I feel like most of the things in the gym at first are just minor tweaks, but they don't accept that it's a minor tweak, and they don't accept that if they just relax for like 2 days. And that's not like, don't do anything. It's just like, if your knee is bothering you squatting and it's bothering you squatting at like 90%, well, try squatting at like 70% and just backing off and seeing what that happens. And it might just feel better on its own, because a lot of injuries are just time based anyway. So if you give it the time it needs, it actually just might resolve itself. Now, because of the types of people that do this sport, they can't chill. They have no ability to regulate themselves. So they're like, oh, my shoulder's bothering me. I'll just try this like one drill I saw on Instagram, and then, I feel all right. All right, I'm just going to like snatch up to 90% again. And they'll do that for multiple weeks in a row until they get to the point where it's like, I can't raise my arm up right now. So
they turn tweaks into injuries.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's true, but it's very hard for people psychologically, and you deal with 100%. That more than I do.
Yes.
Like, I would just be like, all right, well, don't do it.
Yeah,
like, whatever. Sure. But you actually, that's like your job.
That's my job.
Yeah, to help them walk through. So help me understand your ways.
Yes. One of my athletes recently told me that I was really good at building trust and building buy-in, which is basically what you're talking about. Like, how do you navigate this thing? It's like, I hurt my shoulder and I want to be able to do muscle ups, and muscle ups are my weakness. So I have to train muscle ups, and they're coming up in this competition, but my shoulder hurts every single time I do it. And this is going to be like, it depends, but I'm going to give the why it depends. So it depends on the person, who you are. Are you elite? Are you kind of like in this like RX? Are you like, are you learning to do muscle ups? And then where are you relative to your competition day? So if it's like you're elite and we're going to
Wadapalooza.
Well, thank you. We're going to Wadapalooza and we're 2 weeks out. It's like, well, you don't really have much of an option right now. Like, you have to train these because they're going to come up. Now, if you train them and they're so deterrent to your like other fitness that you can't do anything else, it's like, well, we just remove them and we just hope to the best that they don't come out. Or if they're going to show up, that we can rely on your past fitness to support you, and we'll do other things that look like a muscle up but are not a muscle up, and we definitely will not do them under fatigue. But at least we can start to build some of these building blocks, and then hope by the time you get to the competition that you've done enough of this, like, I don't want to call it accessory work, but like other training that has given you some support that you can actually go do the thing. So for the person, like, that's like that person, like, you're kind of like it is what it is, and we're going to do our best. So it's, some of it's like, you just got to push through and deal with it, because that's competition and that's sport. For people who aren't close.
Hold on. I want to stay on that one before you go to the next
Yep.
archetype. I feel like that is one of the major mistakes that a lot of people make. From this is just my perspective, my opinion of how a lot of people do competitive CrossFit, is that they try to stay in peak performance mode too often. Because peak performance mode sometimes can be unhealthy. Like, sometimes you're sore in an area, you got to take some anti-inflammatories to be able to load the shit out of that area and not have the pain inhibit you. Probably not the safest decision to make 52 weeks of the year and expect that the anti-inflammatories won't have health impacts on you. The blocking of the pain and causing compensation around it could be, but like, there is a time for that. If you're an athlete, there's a time to just like, my body is telling me no. And I got to say from my mind, like, shut up. We're here to accomplish something. And sometimes you got to go through it.
Yeah.
That is a necessary component to be a great athlete.
Agreed.
But it also can be the thing that stops you from being a great athlete if you leverage it all the time.
Yes.
So what you just described, I would consider like, you're peaking for a competition, and that's a process for trying to manage your peak around something non-optimal that happened.
Yes.
Because in an optimal world, training is great. You lead in, everything feels good. You compete, everything goes according to plan. But in the real world, it's like,
how often does that actually happen?
Never. It never happens.
Never happens.
It only happens in textbooks. In theory.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So that's that archetype of person. They're somebody that's ready for a competition. And I feel like most people kind of know how to manage that, just like intuitively with painkillers or, program design adjustments. The next archetype is what?
Yeah. The next archetype would be the person who experiences an injury outside of season. So it's like, you're in your off season and you're experiencing this injury. And at that time, it's like, okay, well, you're going to remove the stressors that are bothering you, because there's no reason to continue to do things if it is causing this problem. It's just going to exacerbate the problem more and more and more. So to what end are we going to do this? And it's like, okay, so we remove those stressors. It's not that we're not going to do things. We're just taking those things away. And then we're going to figure out what we need to add in order to help create the adaptations or build the bridges back to those things. So for like the ring muscle up shoulder thing, it's like, your shoulder's bothering you. It's the bottom of the swing. We can't do that. So we're going to find exercises. Well, first of all, we're going to make sure range of motion is there and you're not missing things.
Yeah.
And
like, you have to be able, if the swing hurts, you have to be able to get your shoulder all the way open at the top.
Yes.
With an unloaded, not in a swing, just normal general mobility.
Yeah. Let's just say like, you can't, like, let's just say like, if it is the top of the swing, you need full shoulder flexion plus some. You need to go into thoracic, well, technically global extension. So it's just like, you need these things, and there's other components that you need. I'm just using two examples, but you need these things. And if you can't do them unloaded, and you can't do them, unloaded and without like discomfort, it's like, well, then what makes you think that they're going to feel good when you go to do it loaded and at speed? Because that's what a muscle
and
is.
Tired.
It's dynamic. And then of course with sport, it's fatigued.
Yeah.
So the process would be like, do you have range of motion? Can you control the range of motion? Can you have isolated strength? Can you do compound movements that are under not fatigue? Can you do dynamic movements that produce power? that are non-fatigued? Then can you do some of those compound movements fatigued? Then can you do dynamic power fatigued? That would be like maybe like a really easy, rough idea of how you could flow through a process. And for an athlete, like that's like, it's easy to kind of go through it. It just might be not at the time frame that they want it to be, which
it's
I think
always
is,
not at the time frame.
I think that is the hardest thing. They want it to be immediately.
Yeah. I want it to be immediate. If I do one rehab session, I'm like, why am I still hurting?
I think I think across all people, that's the biggest problem, is that people want rehab to be now. Like they want it to be better right now. And it's like, that's just not how it works. That's not how pain, which is a huge, I don't even want to go down the rabbit hole.
No, we're not going.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole.
That could be another podcast.
Yeah, that's a whole podcast by itself. But it's like, that's just not how pain and injury healing times looks like work. It's just like, that's just not, the physiology doesn't support that.
Yeah. So common things I've seen in CrossFit, shoulders, which happens, overhead position, muscle ups in the bottom of the dip, all those types of things. Wrists, sometimes with like handstand walking and catching jerks or catching snatches that are really heavy. Knees with repetitive jumping, so running, box jumps, high volume double unders, knees and hips with squatting. Those are probably the big, and backs with like volume of deadlift.
I forget. I've read the paper, but I don't remember right now. But it's like back, knee, shoulder.
In CrossFit?
It's like those are the big ones. It's like,
just in general.
Yeah, it's like the for CrossFitters, it's like back, knee, then shoulder. I think that's like the percentage of like, and then
that actually probably lines up with what I've seen as well.
And then the other ones are they're on there, but they're just lesser than those.
Okay, so what are the general timeframes that you've seen with people that are in athlete mode? Let's say you're intermediate athlete or above, meaning you can do all the RX movements. You can, whether that's class, hybrid, one-on-one training, whatever. And you also actively go to local competitions. Yeah. Like you're at that level or above where you're like competing. What's the general time frame for back, knee, shoulder? Like, all right, I have acute back injury. I want to get back to deadlifting.
4 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's like a super general statement because it super depends on who you are, what you've done, like what you're doing in the current moment about it. What does your injury history look like? What is your beliefs around pain and injury? What's your stress levels like? What's your food intake like? Oh
my God, it's so many
the
things.
Genetics of who you are. There's a whole infographic that someone could post up if they want to see it about like what are the influences of pain and like injury healing timelines
and injury too, like how the
injury happens for sure, and then what the injury actually is. Those things also matter.
So, what is the biggest mistake that you see people in that bucket? Like, I have one of those injuries, back, knee, shoulder. What do they do? I'd have mine, but I want to hear yours first to see if they're aligned.
The first thing is that they probably don't listen to their bodies well.
That was my number one. They don't listen.
Yeah, they don't listen to their bodies. The second thing is that they use passive modalities in order to overcome their injury. So that's like...
So you have back pain and you stretch your hamstrings. Is that what you mean?
So let's just say, back pain, they go get massage. And they only get massage, or they get back pain and they go to the chiropractor, and the chiropractor
does an adjustment
back, and they see the chiropractor multiple times a week. And I have no problems with chiropractors.
Yeah, you're not saying that those modalities are wrong.
Correct.
You're just saying that they're complete.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So what should people add to those, or that they might not be doing?
Yeah. So the thing that they're not doing because the thing that they're not doing is they're having a progressive exercise plan, and it seems weird because if you're ingrained in this training culture / in this CrossFit space where you're trying to get better and you're trying to acquire skills, or you're trying to like even take yourself to the next level, like you're a semifinal athlete and you want to get to a games level athlete or whatever those those levels are, you have a coach or yourself is programming for yourself, and you know that progression is necessary, and you know that like the weights need to get heavier or the density needs to get more. But yet when you have an injury issue
or a movement issue,
you look at exercise like it's a one-stop shop where you're like, okay, I'm going to do this one movement. I'm going to use the McGill Big Three just because everybody knows what it is.
Not everyone.
Okay, I would say most people know what it is. So they're going to do the three exercises from McGill's Big Three, which is like the bird dog, the side plank, and the curl up. And they're like, these are the things that are going to help my back pain, and they never progress it. It's like all right, well, maybe yes. In the beginning stages when it's acute and everything is bothering you and you want to do some isometric bracing because it feels good, totally fine. But at some point, that has to get harder. It has to change. You have to give yourself movement back. You have to be able to load tissues better or harder or more intense. And to go from the bird dog to a loaded deadlift
is double your body weight or
whatever your 1RM is. Is a wild thought. And it's just like this weird, I don't know, association with what rehab exercises are versus what training exercises are. Because to me, all that shit is the same. It's a spectrum or a continuum of things. So it's like, we can think about the bird dog as like a bracing / anti-rotation thing, but so is like a kettlebell carry. And then so is like a front squat of some sort or a landmine press. And you can kind of like go down this rabbit hole of making like exercise trees of what exercises are and where they start and where they end. But if you're trying to go from basic McGill Big 3 and trying to deadlift double body weight, you're missing a whole bunch of shit in the middle, and like you need those steps along the way to get you back. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people just make a mistake of. They go, okay, I did my rehab exercise. I'm going to go straight to my double body weight deadlift. Maybe you can go to the deadlift as your first exercise, but depending on the injuries, some other people are going to need some other things along the way.
Yeah. Like they might do isometric pulls where they're pulling against the deadlift, then kettlebell deadlift, and like slowly ramp up in the load reps, all that stuff.
For sure. Sweet. There's 1,000 ways to probably do it, but I think like people just like, they have such a dichotomy between what like exercises are, like a rehab exercise versus like a training exercise, where it's really just a spectrum. Yeah. It's a continuum.
You have taken over some of our harder one-on-one athletes that have been in these chronic pain states.
Yeah.
And they still want to compete. They still want to put themselves out in there.
Yeah.
What's like the biggest thing you've noticed in that process that you could maybe like summarize into something that's actually useful for people? Because it's easy to be like, you know, hey, it hurts, either suck it up or like, you know, change your goal. But also, you know, if you got a passion, you got a passion, whether it hurts or not.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've obviously worked with like some of the higher athletes, like you mentioned. I'm gonna use one of my athletes as like this like example. Her name's Taylor. She's actually gonna come to the skills camp, and she came to me. She was in a car accident and had upper neck trap, middle of back pain, and it would just go out, as she explained it to me, on her whenever. Like she would do a burpee and basically be paralyzed, like not be able to turn, be able to be very rigid for days. And then
frozen muscularly.
Yeah, just like, because like it was so much pain and so much discomfort, but then sometimes could snatch and be totally fine. So there was no rhyme or reason for it. It would come at random waves. And she had been dealing with it for like 2 years. She had saw a bunch of other people, had reached out for some opinions, and they kind of like told her like, this kind of is just what it is, and you just like self-manage as much as you can. So she reached out to me and said, hey, here's my issue. Do you think you can help me? And I was very straightforward with her. And I said, hey, like this has been a long-term thing. It's probably going to be a long-term process. And I don't even know if I can help you. I was like, we could probably get a year in or whatever, and it might just literally be the same. And you kind of have to be okay with that. Like we might have times where it's good and bad, but generally might be the same. So she said, all right, let's just give it a go and see what happens. We are now, I don't even know. I'm going to get it wrong. She's probably going to be mad at me. 2.5 years in. And she's PR'd everything. We've worked on handstand push-ups, handstand walking, snatching, overhead squats. She wants to be able to do muscle ups and be able to like kind of be competitive in an RX sense. The trajectory that we walked was a very slow and methodical timeline. It was very chill. We started off with a lot of movement work, which we could define better if I need to, with isolated bodybuilding stuff. And we knew that the process, because it was a chronic injury, was just going to take time. And she was willing to give me the time. And probably within like the first year was when we started to actually see like really nice changes. Now, obviously there's changes happening along the way and she's getting more confident, but we had a lot of flare-ups where like she'd be good for a couple of weeks and then all of a sudden what happened, we'd get on a call. Obviously she'd be very upset and we would try to do some things in the moment to try to make it better. But I was just like, hey, like it's just going to take a little bit of time. So I think for her and most people who are in that chronic pain state, if they're trying to get out of it and they're trying to be better and they're going to try to like get beyond it, it takes time and it's probably a slower process than you want it to be. And it's going to take somebody who's willing to be very methodical about the way that they progress and receive feedback and then change the program appropriately.
It's patience too.
It's very on their behalf.
Yeah.
Like they need to be okay with it. And so she had the time. If they're an athlete, that might be very different. So I know we worked with somebody very specific who had a knee injury,
Yep.
and their timeline was on a much shorter scale.
And it makes it harder to...
And it made it very hard. Yeah. Like I think you and I went not back and forth, but it was like I was trying to give her something, you were trying to give her something else, and there was just like there's too many inputs going on, and I don't know if it set her up for success. I think we tried to do the best that we could for her. I hope that she thinks that as well, but like it was tough because the injury was not resolved. It was not healed, I don't think, properly.
Yeah.
It needed more
to be at peak performance.
Yeah, to be at peak performance.
Yes.
She needed more time, but she didn't have the time.
Yeah.
So it was like this weird...
And I'm sure y'all recommended taking the time, or it was just one of those, like, you've made your decision, you're competing, so we got to...
It was basically like...
we had input in a consultation capacity to say whether or not she should compete on those timelines, which I verbalized my opinion that I thought it was a very aggressive timeline, but also like... when an athlete's in charge of their own career, it's not my job
for sure
to decide for anybody.
And that's my own.
Same type of thing.
Yeah, I'm just like, if they want to compete, I'm going to try to do the things that I can for them in order to help them at least get through the session, get through the week, get through the training, whatever that is. So for someone who's like in that kind of like realm, you just have to be aware that because that you've been in the state that's a little bit deconditioned and you're maybe not up to 100%, that the peaks and valleys of like the recovery timeline and your trajectory are going to be probably greater. You're probably going to have times where you feel really, really good. And then there's gonna be times where you feel really, really bad. And they're probably going to come in huge waves because you're trying to make performance happen. And that's just kind of like the deal that you have to make with yourself.
Yeah, it's tough.
Even when you're talking with chronic pain people, you have to give them other markers that are beyond loading or whatever you want to call it. Like, could just be like movement selection, like you're getting things back. So it's just like, I can't squat X weight, but it's like, okay, well, you couldn't air squat, so like now you can. So like that's progress. Yeah. Or the time in between flare-ups has reduced or lengthened, I guess.
Yeah,
like
lengthened.
Lengthened.
Yeah.
But yeah,
time in between flare-ups reducing is not good.
No. But yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that's like, it's massively important because chronic pain is just, it's very hard. There's so many things that get changed as the body experiences pain for longer and longer periods of time that it's no longer like depending on what we're talking about, it's no longer a structural issue and it's a neurological change, and there's movement pattern changes and all these other things that are a little bit more in depth and nuance that we can't like really like put down. It's like, cause like structural damage makes sense to us. It's like, okay, my meniscus is torn, so I can't bend my knee right now. Well, after a while, like that's going to like heal or scar down or whatever happens. And then you're left with like the neurological changes that happen or the
or the muscular,
the strategy changes, like how you like move in that pattern, like those start to change, or loss of like you get inhibition. So you have loss of like muscle mass and all these other things that start to happen that are beyond the structural damage that has happened, that are longer lasting, that just take more and more time to fix.
Yeah, it's a big mess of psychology, biology, emotions, all that stuff.
For sure.
Yeah. Chris, do you have any final questions? Should we jump into our rapid fire questions?
Hit 'em.
What'd you say?
Hit 'em.
Hit 'em.
Favorite food?
Pizza.
You're next, man.
Oh, favorite metal album?
Oh, favorite metal album.
Rapid fire, man.
Yeah.
Favorite metal album.
What? A favorite? Yeah. Every Time I Die is Radical.
Is that the album?
Every Time I Die is the band. Radical is the name of the album.
Oh, okay.
It's the last album that they put out.
And so you grew up in Buffalo, so you got to see him on the come up, huh?
Yep. I grew up in Buffalo, saw Every Time I Die play, I don't know, like 20 shows, like in like little shitty bars. It was awesome. Yeah, it was amazing. I loved it.
All right. In all of your CrossFit athletic career, what was your biggest like moment?
I did a local comp back in Buffalo, and this was like maybe like a year or two of working with Mike, and I was not very good in like the RX category, and I placed really well, made it to the final, and ended up being with a couple of dudes who had been just bubble, either went to regionals or bubble regional dudes. And I mean, I got smashed, but I was like, oh man, like the progress that I had noticed like increased, and it was wild. I was like, okay, wow, like if you really like put time and energy into this and you have someone who knows what they're talking about, like you can make really like nice changes and appreciable changes.
Same question, but as a coach, what's your most
that was my next question.
Oh man, I got a couple of them.
Hit it. All right, you could do a couple. We'll allow
so,
it in rapid fire.
Okay. So
I set the rules.
So
here.
I coached Lauren Fisher for a year, and helping her kind of get back to an athletic peak and watching her gain confidence was a really, really cool experience for me, especially because like, I think I didn't really know where she was going to be. I knew she was fit because she is who she is and she's been doing the sport for so long, but like she really wanted to be an individual games athlete again. And I just wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure what her capacity was. I didn't know if she could actually do it or not. And working with her challenged me, but like in a good way. And it made me like kind of really think about the sport and how to get someone better at the sport of CrossFit. We went to semifinals. I think we were 2 spots out. She went home. She did the Rogue qualifier, qualified for Rogue, and then she did awesome at Rogue. And I was
that deadlift, right?
Yeah, dude. She crushed solid. Yeah, she crushed the deadlift. Honestly, she did like the first 2 days. She did really, really well.
She did well in the loaded run too. I feel
the loaded run. Yeah. So like she did really well in like the first, like almost like the whole front side of the competition. And then like the last day was like the 2 like outdoorsy CrossFit events where we were like getting poured on, and like that just like wasn't her thing. But like, man, I was super proud of her, and I was super appreciative that she like even gave me the chance to work with her, because I'm nobody. Like I think she wanted to work with you or parent or whatever. And you guys,
I worked with her.
You guys just didn't have the space.
Yeah. And then she ended up stopping. She went team with Annie and them, and then she came back, and I just was like at a different place and couldn't take it on.
Yeah. So that was one of them. The other one was this last year, when I came on to work with you, I told you I wanted to take people or a person to the CrossFit Games. So last year, I took a team, Jordan Adcock, Nick Reed, Gabby Oker, and then Chris, can you say
Chris K?
Chris K. Konjeski. Thank you.
It does not look like Konjeski.
I know. It doesn't look like Konjeski.
It looks like Nizuski.
Yeah, I know. So those 4 individuals, they made a team. I worked with them. Her parent and I guess worked with them all last year. I mean, I sat in every fucking session that they did, like 3 to 4 hours, like 3 times a week, and we made it to the games.
That was a cool ending.
Cool ending. So I don't know. I'm sure like you could grab the clip if you want to grab it, but there's a clip from semifinals where they're standing on the finish mat and they're like announcing like 1 through 8, and they had to beat a specific team, and that team beat them. And they were winning that workout, or they were beating that team that they had to beat. And in the last round, they basically just fell apart, and the other team kind of just took over. And I just sat down and I was like, all right, well, I mean, they tried. I mean, like, I knew it was going to be tough. They knew it was going to be tough. They gave it their all. They literally were like, they were winning the race that they needed to win. And then it just like fell apart at the end. And I was like, I mean, I couldn't like be more proud. They freaking went for it. And then if you can grab my reaction, Perrin and I are sitting down and they announced their names, and Perrin and I jumped, I don't even know, like 5 feet in the air and just screaming.
You didn't jump 5 feet.
No, whatever. She jumped up, we hugged each other, but it was just like, like it was such like a cool moment because I was not expecting it. I think Perrin and I were more excited than they were. Yeah. Like if you like see our reactions versus their reactions, I feel like they kind of knew, honestly.
Dude, I was with Travis there, and we were back at the Airbnb, and I went crazy. That was awesome.
It was so cool. So those were definitely 2 like really cool coaching moments.
We went to Rogue, and I fell in love with Torchy's tacos.
Yes.
What's your favorite taco from Torchy's?
The breakfast taco was really good. Just like
solid.
The egg. Yeah, like the egg normal breakfast potato taco. Super good.
Yeah, but have you tried any other taco places?
Yeah. Chris was a hater.
Don't be a hater.
Chris was a hater on the Torchy's tacos.
Yeah, I ate it every day.
Yeah, that's good. You like it.
Yeah, it was good.
No, I like it. I was just being a little hipster.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, but my sister's been in Austin for like 13 years, so Torchy's is old news.
For sure.
Now they're a chain, so I had to tell y'all about the other tacos we never ate. All right, cool.
That's all I got, Habdo. Thank you for your time, my friend.
Thank you.